Wherever you are.
Wherever you are.
Wherever you are.
Wherever you are.
Welcome to SGKs.
Welcome to SGK.
Welcome to SGKs
around the world.
Wherever you are.
And in whatever time zone you're in.
Welcome to SGKs around the world.
Welcome to SGKs around the world.
Welcome to SGKs around the world.
Seja bem-vindo a SGK Around the World.
We hope you enjoy the session.
We hope you enjoy the session.
A gente espera que você curta a sessão.
We hope you enjoy the session.
NFTs.
Yes.
I think we can agree that it's a hot topic lately. There's been a lot of articles and opinions written about the NFT space. And we've seen some interesting headlines lately. So let's talk about it. Sometimes we hear stories about people who have spent a small fortune, or in this case, a not so small fortune, on a piece of digital asset that doesn't seem to have value. And we're wondering, for brands to drop an NFT without considering its value for these customers, it seems like a missed opportunity. So how do brands build value in their NFTs so that it is exciting and engaging for their customers?
I think, there's lots of lessons to be learned so far. It's been a couple of years since this has reached kind of peak hype. So some of the things we've learned, I think obviously some of the examples you're talking about are in the art world, and art has an intrinsic value, so that's okay. But when brands get into the space, they need to really sort of have a hard look at where they bring value as well. And obviously brands really need two things to do that. They need a combination of authenticity, which brands already have because they're a brand. They bring authenticity to the game. That automatically gives them something of value. What they need to work harder at is creating scarcity, because brands by nature produce things for the masses. Most brands do. So they need to kind of find new ways to make whatever they're doing in NFTs somehow scarce and rare, and that will increase their value as well if they expect it to perform the same way that, say, a piece of art does. So brands obviously have their own IP, which is incredibly valuable itself. That's the authenticity side of it. They create scarcity by controlling that IP. So who do they give that IP to? How do they apply it? Where does it get rolled out to? How is it used in the digital world? That's really how they're going to create value in the long term, and that's what the best brands are actually doing at the moment. So we're all familiar. I think most of us are familiar with the Coke version of that. Coke got into the space quite early. And released a bunch of NFTs. They created value obviously through their own brand because they're using their iconic Coke assets, the Coke logo, the Coke red. They released their kind of trading card, their friendship card in the digital version, so that has a value to it as well. By looking back at their past and playing on the nostalgic elements of their brand, that has a value to fans and consumers all over the world. What they did that was really interesting was they partnered up with Taffy, which is a co-creator-led group. And they really have the expertise in how to create something new and exciting that really can only exist in the digital world. So the important thing is not just replicating what you do in the physical world with the digital world, but creating something completely new that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And that's what they've done. They created something, the puffer jacket became the first thing that they really did, and that's the thing that they're going to be known for as well. So creating something which is wearable, in this case in Decentraland. They were early to get into that space, something you can actually wear, it has utility, actually has a function and a use, it brings value to it as well. So you can actually wear it, you can own it, and it's a limited run, and it's something that you'll never see in the outside world. So automatically that brings value to it.
Didn't Pepsi drop the mic with some NFTs as well?
Yeah, so Pepsi, yes, you're right. I mean, just recently Pepsi got into the space as well, notably later than Coke. And they've gone about it kind of a different way. You know, Pepsi have decided that they're going to build again on their brand equities. You know, they've recognized Pepsi's relationship with music in this case, and doing it in the right way, again, true to their brand. You know, Pepsi's relationship with music has been going on for generations. So for them to get into the space, they recognized, you know, the mic drop would be a great way of doing it. They created a whole bunch of different assets. In fact, I think 1,893 of them, which they actually gave away for free. So very different model from what Coke did before that. And an interesting way to do it, creating value through these little art pieces, which each one has its own kind of unique personality. So getting into that space quickly, but also allowing people to own a piece of that, being the first to do it as well, being their first foray could be interesting for them as well. Maybe the question is there again, the fact that they've given them away for free and produced so many of them, potentially the scarcity value isn't quite as strong. And if you look at what they are, I mean, they're all really interesting on their own, but they didn't collaborate with anybody notable on this. So there was no kind of Pepsi plus an artist creating these. So they're essentially just kind of brand assets that are rolled out. Arguably, those could be just regular brand assets with no apparent value. They could be part of an ad campaign. So the specialness or the exclusivity of those or the uniqueness of those pieces is maybe not as strong as if they were to collaborated with, say, a partner and done something very special and very unique, something which you wouldn't normally see Pepsi do. So it sort of remains to be seen really whether the long-term value in those NFTs will be as strong as, say, something that Coke did. So that's going to be an interesting one to see going forward.
I wonder if Pepsi is also leveraging on nostalgia when they style their NFTs with those vintage microphones.
Yeah, the kind of retro-looking mics, right? Yeah, definitely. There's a callback to its past, and that's what Coke have done really well, and that's what people like as well. They like to see things that are rebooted, and so there's kind of an emotional attachment to those things, which is kind of important. So again, it pays attention to the craft of it. What's the story you're telling? Is it authentic? If it's Pepsi, it's authentic. How are they enhancing that though? You could argue that maybe just by going it alone, that they weren't really adding too much to the story. They could have created those things through a regular agency. Maybe the long-term value would be in the event itself. You drop those mics, but was it done as part of an event necessarily, which is what Coke did. So arguably that might add more value in the long term.
In terms of bringing in, like you mentioned that they didn't use an artist, for example, they didn't collaborate with an artist, but I think Nike did collaborate.
Yeah, and this is probably one of the most well-known at the moment, and Nike obviously recognised that they needed to get into this space, but also recognised how important it was for them to partner with the right people to get into this space. And it tells you a lot, a brand as big and as famous and as powerful and as expert as Nike recognized that they couldn't go this alone, that they really had to kind of partner with the right people to do this. And their partners in this case was Artifact, who are barely 2 years old, an organization of creators that are brilliant at creating virtual sneakers in this case. No surprise, Nike bought them most recently, big headline, undisclosed amount, but it kind of shows how committed Nike is to this space and how they recognize that they really had to partner with the right people to make sure that they were relevant to the community that they're entering into. And by partnering up with Artifact, they've instantly gained access to the gaming community apart from anybody else, people that work on Discord. This is a way for them to enter that community in kind of a meaningful way and a credible way for people that are digital natives in this space. So they're able to kind of bring their brand into a new space that maybe they wouldn't have been so welcome had they just tried to go it alone. And again, it wasn't about just recreating your products in the digital world. It's about doing something new and exciting, maybe something that's impossible to do in real life. And again, appealing to the sneakerheads out there, Nike has a huge fan base and sneaker collectors are, spend lots of money on sneakers anyway. So the collectible aspect of it already exists. All they're doing is finding a new medium for those same fans to bring it into the virtual world. And that's how really they've created value through doing that.
I think it's interesting to see how new brands can start to bring value with NFT. And I think one of the things that they can do is to be the first of something. As you can see in this first tweet by the Twitter CEO, Jack Dorsey, he made it into an NFT and it sold for over $2 million. First of something.
Yeah.
Another way that these new brands can bring value in is through creating community. You can see from these three NFT projects, Fluff Bunnies, CryptoPunks, and the Bored Ape Yacht Club. CryptoPunks being one of the earliest, so they have that first of something, but the most popular is actually Bored Ape Yacht Club. So what does it mean to be a part of the Bored Ape Yacht Club? So essentially, there are 10,000 apes that you can choose from. Different permutation give you different levels of rarity and scarcity. So after you buy an ape, it actually doubles as a membership to this exclusive social clubs where a lot of celebrities have joined in. So celebrities like Kevin Hart, Justin Bieber, Jimmy Fallon, and even Paris Hilton has bought one of these apes.
And these new upcoming NFT brands, they're such huge brands themselves, they're always looking to collaborate with long-standing brands as well.
Yeah.
Right. So then one example is this collaboration with Adidas and with Bored Ape, and not actually just between the two of them. There's actually like Adidas, Bored Ape, G Money, and Punk Comics. So Adidas and Bored Ape, you guys know, but G Money is this influencer that is an NFT influencer, and his main thing is spreading information to kind of like to the wider community to teach them what NFT is all about and how to get into that space. And then there's also Punk Comics, who is this group of creators trying to breathe more stories and life into the NFT characters itself by creating physical and digital comic books. So then in this collaboration, right, it's Adidas' first attempt into the Metaverse in a broader sense. So they're collaborating with these NFT creators. They're doing limited edition drops and creating scarcity. So then if you buy the NFT, there is an access to the physical goods too. And then in order for you to find out what is being dropped, you go to the online and then you read the comics.
So the content itself becomes part of the value. You know, the richer the content, the more creators are involved. Which is again why creator-led organizations are really making waves here, because they're the ones creating the valuable content and bringing value to brands like Adidas that wouldn't be able to do this alone, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's really, I mean, brands are always finding new and interesting ways to collaborate, and the public love interesting collaborations. You know, people lap it up, and getting into the digital world, going into NFTs is actually a great way to even bring two like really well established old brands, arguably bring them together and create some really exciting new news and actually create desirability. So people will actually want it because again, it's limited. It's something that's only happened in this space. A collaboration between two brands that you would never normally see before, and only happening in the virtual world. So that automatically brings a lot of value to it as well.
So we've got new brands collaborating with long-standing brands, and of course, the next most logical step is for two long-standing brands to collaborate as well. So in this case, I think one of the recent examples is Mattel, who has a brand under their umbrella, which is, of course, everyone knows Barbie, Barbie dolls, and Balmain. Barbie has a long history with fashion. She is a fashion doll anyway.
Icon.
So, she's a fashion icon on her own. And she has collaborated with fashion designers since 1985 with the first Barbie collectible with Oscar de la Renta. And since then, she has collaborated with many designers like Givenchy, Vera Wang, and it seems a brand that is avant-garde or a luxury brand that is avant-garde and that has huge online presence as well as a demographic that is very into social media and for example, Instagram and TikTok, and which also have a fan base with the likes of Kim Kardashian. And family. So the collaboration with Barbie and Balmain is almost like natural in a way. If Barbie wants to engage consumers their customers in a more progressive space, Balmain would be a perfect fit. And interestingly, when Barbie announced or when Mattel announced this collaboration, customers were very excited. But the thing that sort of like stopped them in their tracks is basically they didn't realize that it was an NFT. And basically what it means is the two brands basically had to educate their customers on how to purchase an NFT. That they have to open a crypto wallet and that they have to bid and look at OpenSea and all these terms which they're not very familiar with. And that it becomes quite an interesting way for customers to go into the space.
forward, we can see how engaging the metaverse can be, right? There's I don't know if you guys were there or seen it, but Travis Scott, who is an American rapper and a singer, he actually did a concert in Fortnite. And this concert actually happened just when the pandemic has just started, so like early 2020. So it was just in the right time, right? He is known for larger than life performances on his physical concert, and he brings that energy and actually amplifies it even more in Fortnite. So if you see the video, he's singing the song called Sicko Mode, and he is basically blitzing from one space to another, like teleporting. And he is not a normal human size. He's actually this giant, you know, in this like very surreal world, and performing to all like the fans in Fortnite. And it's actually amazing because it's over 27.7 million unique users were there to experience this concert, which is not close to if it was a real concert, right?
And it's less sweaty.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the comfort of your own home, right? So that's one example. And then there's an even more recent example, which is the Metaverse Fashion Week. You guys know it just happened this year, March 2022. This is really cool because it's bringing big brands like Dolce & Gabbana, Tommy Hilfiger, Etro, and Elisab, just to name a few, to actually start playing in this metaverse. So how it works is you come in, you create an avatar, and like you said, create wallet in order for you to participate in this fashion world and actually purchase digital assets there. And this could be the future of e-commerce because there are certain collaborators in here that allows these brands to set up their digital shops there, and which allows us, the avatars, to just come in and out and purchase pieces very easily. And you can purchase pieces that are usually not even possible in the physical world, right? Because of production costs and materials and whatnot. In this Metaverse Fashion Week, you can wear really, really daring, avant-garde and cutting-edge pieces. So yeah, that's very exciting, actually.
If a piece of digital art or digital asset is compelling enough, like our next example, which is the Hortensia chair by Andre Racing, that went viral on social media and later sold as an NFT. It became quite a sensation. So it is, of course, a piece of furniture in the virtual world. It only existed in the virtual world. Because of its popularity, it was made into a real furniture that you can buy, you can purchase in real life and have that in your living room. And of course, you can still have the digital version in your virtual living room in the Metaverse,
Yes.
for example. And that's just seeing is a way of blurring. You're seeing a way of blurring the lines between the digital asset and the physical asset. And talking about NFT properties that have become that is potentially being developed into a real world asset or real world entertainment in this example is Reese Witherspoon's media company, Hello Sunshine. It is partnering with Will of Women to develop its 10,000 plus NFT characters for movies and TV shows. Because the world of cryptocurrency is often seen as male-dominated, and World of Women, basically what they're saying on their website, according to research published in November 2021, female artists account for just 5% of all NFT art sales in the prior 21 months. So they were trying to see if they can make the NFT space a little more equal between men and women. And of course, Reese Witherspoon's media company is really about promoting women issues. So this collaboration with Reese Witherspoon's media company and World of Women makes sense in terms of helping each other with a common cause.
Yeah, opens it up to more people.
Opening up with more people, exactly. Stoner Cats is a TV show that is being developed with the help of Mila Kunis, Ashton Kutcher, Jane Fonda, and Chris Rock, providing voices for these cat characters. And it is created out of a reaction from studios that rejected the project and they couldn't get funding for it. So Mila Kunis came up with this idea that why don't we fund this project through NFTs? So buyers can, or fans of the show can purchase NFTs to get access to the episodes, as well as collectibles as well. And this becomes an interesting change in the way content is created, because it means the TV program is being created without funding or permission or from big studios.
Yeah.
And if you imagine if your favorite show is being cancelled,
Yeah.
that will no longer happen, because if through NFTs fans can support the show and to make sure its longevity. And it also helps to create a space for brands to support the show as well. Because if they know that's where their demographic and the audience is, they can support the show, a TV show like that, directly.
So you're kind of using blockchain technology to remove the obstacles to get things out there.
Yeah.
And by removing those obstacles, you bring the creators and the fans closer together. It's also a good lesson for brands, isn't it? Because that's how you're automatically building a community, because you're bringing yourself closer to your buyers, your audience in that sense. Again, so a really good lesson for brands there to build that community in direct relationship to the content or the products that they're buying as well.
The difference is they go directly to the fans and create the content supported directly as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So again, talking about communities, back to the gaming community again, incredibly powerful community, and I feel definitely one that brands need to really engage with. They need to pay close attention to them, because the gaming community is the future community. That they're already in this space. They did a collective facepalm when Mark Zuckerberg announced the Metaverse, because they've been doing this for years. So it's really a community that brands really should be engaging with and learning from at the same time. But you need to go into it with the right way. You need to engage with gamers in a very specific way, and a way that's very relevant. Otherwise, you run the risk of being thrown out or rejected or cancelled, the worst case as well. So again, a good example of how brands can do this is, I still think, is Wendy's. Wendy's Hamburgers did an amazing job, not necessarily an NFT, but they ventured into the gaming world, bringing back to Fortnite again. Wendy's decided the best way to engage with gamers was not to try and sell them something, but to really kind of introduce their brand in a meaningful way. But they did it by really understanding the community and really taking the trouble to learn the rules of the game itself, and to make sure what they were doing was authentic to the gaming community itself. Essentially, rather than trying to sell them things, merchandise and so on and so forth, they just dropped Wendy as an avatar into the game and created their own gameplay within that. And it was very true to their brand. It was Wendy. She had her red hair and the pigtails. So again, very authentic. It was using their IP in a really clever way, and a way that was related to the game itself. And again, true to their brand. Her personal battle was to wage war on kind of frozen beef, and that's something that Wendy's never does. And that was a really great way of kind of intertwining your story with the actual gameplay itself, and therefore becoming really relevant, something which was instantly shareable, got talked about loads, and it brought Wendy's as a brand into the world of Twitch, where it had just thousands and millions of hits, was getting talked about during the actual gameplay itself. So great example of how a brand needs to kind of learn how to interact with the community, learn the rules of the game before they get involved as well. So great example there of Wendy's kind of finding a new audience and reaching the masses, in the right way. Similarly, another kind of big headline that's just happened again within the last month is in Japan. Rakuten, arguably the biggest online retailer in Asia, has done a really amazing job in venturing into the NFT space. They launched Rakuten NFT just last month with a huge fanfare, and they've done it with the help of lots of other kind of creators, brands and assets of which they're partnering up. They dropped an Ultraman NFT on the first day, which you can imagine in Japan is huge news and got snapped up really quickly. But it's really interesting that Rakuten is entering this space in a big way. They're not just kind of creating a marketplace just to sell NFTs. They're also creating an entire kind of infrastructure and platform, and they're inviting other companies, other brands to come and play in that space. So they're setting everything up for you. They're creating a new payment system that will allow you to kind of buy NFTs in a much simpler way. So potentially in future, removing all the blocks involved, as you mentioned, cryptocurrency being a male-dominated thing, very techy, a bit clunky. By making it easier they're potentially removing all of those barriers and actually opening up the floor for multiple brands to come in and create, mint, sell, and even trade NFTs within their space as well. They're talking about creating peer-to-peer networks as well, so people can swap NFTs on Rakuten as well, which is really interesting. So that's automatically opening it up to a much broader market, a much broader range of consumers by making it easier to buy, more accessible, assets that everybody loves. They're partnering up with J-League, so similar to the NBA, they're kind of launching kind of special kind of J-League moments. They own all of those assets and they're able to kind of sell them as minted NFTs. Manga, anime as well is a big thing that they're tying up with, and some really well-known kind of rock bands as well that they have in Japan. So launching kind of special NFT trading cards for these kind of partners in terms of music icons and that sort of thing. So again, what we're going to see, I think, is maybe more kind of mass retailers getting into this space, opening up the floor for all kinds of different kind of purchases. Maybe not so much high value, but maybe kind of more high volume in future with easier ways to pay.
It looks like that's where NFTs are heading. That's how it's going to evolve in the future. And it feels like it could potentially take off in a really big way in Asia, especially because the top 5 countries with the biggest NFT adoption are in Asia, with the Philippines leading. So we could definitely see brands start something exciting here in Asia where the audience is ready and waiting.
Yeah, and again, you've got that, Asian countries typically have a very young generation. They're a large percentage of younger people who are by nature digital natives, and they're just growing up into this world. So, and you have very early adoption of anything digital in this part of the world. So yeah, great opportunities for brands in Asia.
Perhaps one of the easiest way for brands to connect with consumers is to aim directly at the causes and charities that are close to their hearts.
Yeah, and just like in the real world, if brands do this in an authentic way, it carries more weight. So the same would apply to the digital world. So a brand, could be looking to NFTs to support their cause in that sense, but they need to, again, do it in the right way. Do it in a way that's true. Don't just do it for the novelty factor. You need to do it in a way that really tells a story and really supports what your brand is about and the community that you're really trying to address and help in that sense as well. So best example that springs to mind is the most recent one, Under Armour collaborating with Steph Curry. But they also brought in a gaming company to make it happen because they needed the expertise and access to that community in order to make that happen. So Gala Games helped them actually kind of launch this. So again, they recognized the power of having creating kind of partnerships to actually bring this to life in a really meaningful way. And obviously these were sold, they made money, and the money went to support their own charities, which was basically to help underprivileged kids get more access to sports. So true to Under Armour's kind of brand DNA, giving more people access to sport, encouraging more people to play sport, helping underprivileged kids, and doing it in a way that is exactly authentic and true to their brand. The other thing I think from the Coke example again is they supported that through their cause as well. So Coke sponsors the Special Olympics. So the proceeds, the profits from this kind of event that they held, it was a special event, they held a virtual auction of these NFTs. The proceeds from that went to support the Special Olympics, which is actually their charitable cause. So again, that kind of brings a value to it from a brand point of view, because that's something that they're doing that really adds value to the community as well. So all of these things together means that their first foray into the world of NFTs actually has quite a lot of value to it, not just the intrinsic value in the NFTs, but the value of going into that space and the way that they ventured into this world. So kind of an important lesson maybe for brands to get it right in terms of kind of going into this space.
Yeah, Spencer, I think that's a really cool example of how brands collaborate with each other to do good, right? I can think of another example where 2 brands, Prada and Adidas, not only collaborated with each other, but also collaborated with their fans to create this NFT for good. So they call upon 3,000 of their fans to give them like an image. So they crowdsource it from them. And then after that, they work with this digital artist called Zach Lieberman for him to take all these assets and compose it to an NFT that people can purchase. Then 80% of the proceed of that will actually go to a company called Slow Factory, which is a climate innovation lab. Then 15% back to the creators and 5% to the digital artist himself. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so it's doing good and then giving back to the community and the planet.
Yeah.
And with all the concerns about NFTs and its impact on the environment, or at least in the immediate future, channeling, at least for now, challenging those NFT profits into saving the forests or saving some animals, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, as long as it's again authentic and true to your brand, and it's done with the genuine sense of purpose. I think that's the thing. Making sure that it's aligned with your brand purpose is probably the key thing there for brands.